Hey everybody, George Christie here with Wine Industry Network. Welcome to the Win Insider Series. This is a little something we started doing during COVID. This is a chance for us to not only talk about some of what's happening in industry, but I think get to know some of the people that are doing some really cool things that you may or may not know about. So our first guest, as we're bringing back the Insider Series, is Jen Warrington. Jen is the glue at Wise Academy. Jen, welcome. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's great.
So, Jen, why don't we let's get some of the businessy stuff out of the way. Tell everybody a little bit about Wise Academy and your role there.
Okay, great. Yes. WISE stands for Wine Industry Sales Education. Our whole purpose in life and being is to help wineries and the individuals in the wine industry succeed. And we do that in a bunch of different ways. One of the most well-known ways is our classes. So that's where we started in 2009 was classes. We have over 30 different classes now. We also do mystery shopping. We do a lot of coaching and consulting. And we have a leadership program called Cabinet that is roundtables essentially for leaders across different wine industries from Oregon, Washington, all through California, Idaho. We've got people in Maryland. So yeah, it's a great way to connect with others in other peers and just hear what's going on and be supportive.
So tell me a little bit more about Cabinet. I was not aware about that, but I love it. So okay. Yeah, tell me a little bit more about it.
Yeah, it's a great program. It's by invitation only. So somebody who's in Cabinet or
that's why I don't know about it. Okay, I just figured that out.
Okay. I'm actually in the process of putting together a cabinet for vendors as well. Okay, so that, I was getting to you, George. Okay. You were on that list. Yes. All right. But it's basically people who are in the wine industry and really want to grow professionally and personally. And so the idea of these cabinet meetings is we meet monthly for 2 hours on Zoom. And the idea is to bring ideas, things that you're working on, opportunities or, struggles, anything. And your peers will then respond back to you with their own personal, like what's worked for them. Yeah. So nobody's shooting, if you will, on each other. It's more about learning from experience. And so it helps us grow as individuals. And we recognize that, the whole person is there. It's not just the business side, but like the whole person, that there's feelings and things like that. So really encourage that. And WISE moderates each one. And we do it within a protocol so that everybody sort of gets heard. And there's certain, elements to it that sort of separates us from a typical roundtable. So
how many people are typically part of one of the roundtable discussions?
Yeah, it's somewhere between 8 and 10 per group, and we have about 10 groups right now.
Wow.
So, which is a great way for me to be like on the inside of like, what are the trends happening in the industry? What are people talking about? And so I'm hearing from 100 different leaders every month, kind of like the big things that they're working on. So. Yeah. Well, we have, and it's different levels too. So we have a couple of groups that are like general managers or the C-suites. And then we have a middle sort of, if you will, group that are people that oversee either multiple direct-to-consumer channels or multiple within a channel. So they oversee, 4 or 5 tasting rooms or wine clubs or whatever. And then we have a group of individuals who are managers of either like tasting room, wine club, e-commerce, phone, that kind of thing. And we want them mixed up so that they'll get a sense of how to grow as a direct-to-consumer professional without, if you will, the house palette of what they do at their winery, so they can learn from their peers.
Well, I just think that's such a great idea because my background for starting Wine Industry Network and being much more in the B2B vendor side was on the winery side. And I can remember just sometimes scratching my head, like feeling like I just was out of ideas, you know what I mean? On what we could be doing to get somebody to the tasting room, or how can we get, the tasting room more motivated to sign up wine club members or whatever I happen to be working on. And you just don't typically, that's an unusual situation to be able to sit down with 8 to 9 or 10 of your peers to kind of go. Because typically the wine industry thing, and I remember there was like kind of a cartoonish thing that came out and it was like, hey, how's business, Bob? Like, business is great. We've never sold so much wine as we have it. We just kind of, it's like a little bit of a bullshit session, right? Where we just are always telling people how great things are,
Right.
but
Yeah.
never really feeling comfortable enough to say, hey, I need some help. Like, is this
Right.
a good idea? Is this a bad idea?
Right.
So I think that's great. And just thinking about as you were speaking, that's a lot of coordination. That's a lot of work to be able to,
That's
I
why
mean,
my job title is the glue.
holy smokes. Yeah, you are the glue. I don't know how
Yeah.
you do it, but it makes sense to me now because for those of you in our audience, Jen is really a fixture at the different conferences that we do. She's always submitting 2, 3, 4, 5 topic ideas. And now I kind of get out, see, now I know your secret. I just thought you were just a genius. I'm like,
Well, that
geez,
too. Come
Jen's
on, I
got
can be
yeah,
both.
well, I guess you're both, but I just like, she's always got a million ideas. I'm like, I don't know. And I know
Yeah.
you're busy. So, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to stay on the Wise Academy track here because it's super interesting to me. So were you there in 2009?
So the company formed in 2008.
Okay.
The first classes happened in 2009. I started just helping file and organize in 2009, and now I run the day-to-day business, all the operations, business development.
And Leslie started the business.
Yes, Leslie is a co-founder, and she's doing less and less, but still has oversight into all the financials, all the strategy and that kind of thing.
Yeah. No, she's brilliant. For people that don't know her, she is like a mad science. She's a genius. Like she's very smart. And
yeah, I'm actually blessed to have I have 2 partners, so there's 3 of us. Liz Mercer, Leslie Berkland, and myself. So the 3 of us sort of are the machine behind the Wise.
The brain trust there. Yeah, you guys are just really amazing, the things that you do. Now, it's the different world that we live in 2024 versus 2009. And actually 2009 was like, it was a tough time, and coming out of the economy was in a kind of a rough spot.
Absolutely.
And then things got really good. So
yes,
when you think about like how things are today and the things that you're working on and having classes that are focused on, how does that compare to the things that you were talking about like in 2010, 2011, 2012?
Right. It's interesting how there's cycles within any kind of like industry or life. But I think so in 2008, 9, that was sort of the beginning of the direct to consumer, and people were starting to see how lucrative it could be. And what ended up happening was Leslie had sold the business, was kind of in between things, and she was still getting calls from wineries saying, hey, do you know a great wine club manager? But the wine club manager was still in that position and a great person, but didn't have the skills. Right. So we realized that there was a need for that direct consumer, that growth path. And what I like to think about 15 years later into it is that like how far we've come as an industry in terms of professionalizing the direct to consumer side of the business. So I see a lot of growth there, especially in the more established regions who are, really leaning into that. They're not just trying to figure out how to keep their business running, right? Yeah. But I think that we're seeing things like, you're great at sales in the tasting room, so we're going to make you the tasting room manager, for example. But this poor person has no idea how to do any kind of management, like no skills or any training. So we've been really leaning into that a lot more, is coming out with more like leadership training and that kind of thing. But in terms of overall, I feel like, we're talking about, traffic's down, what do we do? Well, we forgot how to be great at outreach, and we used to have to go and drum up sales and so dusting off some of those things that we used to do very well as an industry is kind of like, we've got to look back at some of those things, and then yes, adjust for the new times, so thinking outside the box and doing more things beyond same old, just because what got you here today, what brought you here today isn't what's going to project into the future. We got to keep going, right?
Well, it's funny. I was I missed a little bit at the beginning, but Rob McMillan had Silicon Valley report today, and it was really good. I definitely encourage people to check it out. Yes. But Rob at the very end said something along the lines like, if your strategy is to continue just to hang a few balloons out on your mailbox, the tasting, that's not going to cut it. You know what I mean? You got to be doing something else. You've got to be aggressive. You've got to be putting yourselves out there. You got to be looking outside of your backyard.
Right. Looking
if
at
you want to be
different
successful.
industries, what are they doing? Learning from others and yes. Yeah.
One area that I think we've done really well with as an industry too over the last, let's call it 15, 20 years, is embrace technology
Hmm.
so much, with so much more enthusiasm, than we
Yes.
did when early on in my career. And I think that's obviously there's still people that like haven't. But I think for the most part, we're seeing good positive trends in there, and they're learning how to leverage the data
Yes.
better than we
Yes.
ever have in the past, which I think is encouraging.
Absolutely. Yeah. Used to be, oh, we're a bunch of farmers, so, we're just going to make great wine and hope that that sells,
Yeah.
like we've definitely evolved a long way. And there's some great vendors and people out there that have some great products to help the wineries really succeed and really, be able to leverage that knowledge and their own business to see how they can find opportunities.
One of the things I think that you also have a pretty unique perspective on is what's happening in other regions outside of so you live in Napa, right?
Yes. Yep.
So, and I'm over in Healdsburg, over in Sonoma County. And I think sometimes those of us that sort of are in the industry here, you kind of forget about all these other,
We're in our
we
bubble.
used to call emerging regions, right? But they've emerged and they're doing really well. And
Absolutely.
um, they become as much a destination as Napa and Sonoma have. So
Yes.
I'm sure that, tell me a little bit about some of like because I think that's really cool when you go somewhere else and see what they're doing. Tell
Yeah,
me about like some of
it's
these
a tough part of my job. Everyone should feel very bad for me that I have to go out to all these, different wine regions across the world.
Now, I know you don't want to pick any favorites, but tell me a couple of your other favorite regions that you love to go visit
Yeah,
and work in.
I feel like we have a really strong relationship with a lot of like the West Coast, so I go up to the Willamette Valley a few times a year, if not me, my partners, into Paso, that kind of thing. But we've done some work in like Nebraska and upstate New York. Last year, I was able to go to South Africa for work. Like terrible. I went up to British Columbia earlier this year. So just like not even just United States, but all over, and just hearing to a certain extent, it's very similar, like what we struggle with as an industry. We're seeing it in different regions, but it shows up differently in those regions. And so I just find it fascinating. Like there's nothing more like that I love more about my job than going to a new region. And then I always mystery shop. I go to a few places because I don't want to feel like a carpetbagger. Yeah, I'm from Napa, that 4-letter word.
Yeah.
And what we do in Napa, you should do it too. Absolutely not, right? Like I just be like shamed out of there. So I like to see what they're doing well and what they're doing differently, and then be able to like talk about it from that knowledge rather than coming in cold and not knowing anything or having any idea of what their challenges are. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
The secret
fascinating.
the secret shopping thing I think is really cool too. It's kind of like it's a little scary because you don't know what you're gonna, when you say let yourself be have a secret shopper come in and that whole experience. And usually it's more than one, right? So when you do secret shopping, if a winery says, hey, we want you guys to do that.
But,
Talk a little bit about that. Like how many different people come in and like different ages and like
mhm.
how do you to
Yeah.
get the full picture?
And to be fair, our mystery shopping program is going to be different from somebody else's that's doing it. But for
Yeah.
us, what we do is we suggest 4 shops at a minimum, just because we're looking for trends.
Yeah.
When someone comes in and has an experience, that's a snapshot in time. So it's really hard to know if the business is, doing well or not just on that little snapshot. So obviously, the more that we can see, the more data points we can see, the more trends we can look at. So we like to do a minimum of 4. All of our shoppers are in the wine industry or have been in the wine industry. We train them up. They've either taken class, our tasting room professional class, and or they've taken a quiz and they get because we want to make it so it's a level playing field, that what we're looking at, we're all looking at it the same way. Here are the best
Right.
practices. This is what we're looking for, so that we can report back on that. The shoppers answer about somewhere between 80 and 100 questions, so just depending on if the winery wants to really dive into something or not. But those are sort of our basic questions. And we look at everything from like what we call the backstage. Are they ready for guests? Is everything in place? From the parking lot to the glassware to, everything set up to, what is that hospitality like? Are they greeting us? Are they thanking us for coming? Are they surprising and delighting us to like the sales skills and that kind of thing. And so what ends up happening is the shoppers fill out these forms online. And then me and my team will go through it and kind of figure out what the trends are and report back to the winery with a couple of different reports. Here's what you're doing very well. These are the strengths, kudos to you, keep that up. Here's some areas of opportunity, and here's how you might want to, with recommendations, how you might want to move the needle with that.
Yeah.
And ideally they're working with us so it's not just a one and done, but over time so they can see track those changes.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, metrics will tell you what's happening, but mystery shopping will help you tell you why it's happening.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah. Sorry, I could go on forever.
No, I have some follow-up, so we're going to keep going this. So I imagine you've had some really cool experiences, but you've had to have some weird experiences too, where you kind of go, oh my God, that was the rudest person, or that was the filthiest tasting room. I mean, like, tell me, like, do you have any like stories of things that were just, this is bizarre, without naming any names?
It's funny because when I do a lot of coaching too. So when I'm working with teams and telling them, one of the this was years ago, but it was a nice, well-established winery up in Calistoga. And I came in to do a mystery shop, and the woman was behind the tasting bar knitting and didn't look up and didn't engage. And it was like I had to say hello. I had to engage. I had to ask the questions. It was like, oh my God, this is like the worst, and so you think of somebody coming to Napa Valley and going to like a nice brand and getting that experience. It's like, so oftentimes, because I've overseen about 6,000 mystery shops, not me going to 6,000, but overseeing the whole program, right?
That's amazing.
People always ask me, where should I go? What's a good example? Like where, and when it comes down to it, it's all about that host on that day.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Yeah. But then sometimes you got to deliver the bad news too, right? That's got to be challenging, where you kind of
totally. Sometimes it's a matter of like, we need to have a discussion about, are these the right people in the right jobs here? And sometimes it's like, hey, they're so good at providing great hospitality, they forgot how to sell anything, right?
Yeah.
So it ranges all over, but yeah, it's like, I'm here to help. Here's what we're seeing,
Yeah. But you got to know the truth. I mean, if you're not dealing with reality, you're not dealing with reality, right? So
exactly. You can only get better if you know where your opportunities are.
So I want to get your opinion on something else. So tasting fees, right? So it's something that's been like driving me crazy. I probably already yapped at you about this before, but when I started in the industry, even in Napa, like there were like no tasting fees or very minimal tasting fees. Mm-hmm. And I get frustrated sometimes with our industry because I feel like on one hand, all we talk about is what we can do better to be more approachable to the wine curious, to be more accessible, to be more interesting to a younger consumer. Mm-hmm. But then we charge, especially where we are up here, to go out wine tasting nowadays is going to be anywhere from 25 to 125 or more per person for an experience. And I think to myself, like, how is that making us feel more accessible or more approachable? Or how is that encouraging younger people to want to come visit us and get it? I get that, like, they don't have the discretionary income to maybe to walk out with, two $500 cases of wine, right? Mm-hmm. But I said to myself, like, but maybe 10 years from now they will. And where are they going to go, right? They're going to go places where they had a good experience. And so I kind of feel like it's out of control. And I know there's more and more chatter out there about, no tasting fees on Wednesdays, or, discounted fees during the week, or people actually going back to like no tasting fees. You've seen a lot. What are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting. I had this conversation. It was coming up a lot in British Columbia when I was up there in a couple of months ago, and they were, talking about whether or not to be charging, and some were, some weren't, and the majority were, but like at what price point and that kind of thing. Right. And I think, at the end of the day, are we charging for what it's worth, like what the value, what we're doing with it? So yes, we've got to pay overhead. Yes, we've got to pay for the wine. Yes. But if it's a pour and ignore, the last thing I want to do is pay someone $125 when, they're not even engaging with me. But if I have a great experience and there's value add, they're showing me things, I'm learning things, I'm doing things I wouldn't do by myself. I can see some justification in terms of that.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's some that are taking it like far beyond like, but again, that's a different target market. They're not looking for the younger, less
Right.
disposable income. They've got like a subset of people that, and that's fine. That's their brand. That's how they want to roll. But if they're trying to be more inclusive, yeah, I agree. That's not the way to go about it.
Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, obviously there's some notable exceptions because of all the things that they've done right for all those years, and they don't want to be, absolutely inundated. But those are for me the kind of the exceptions to the rule. And
Yes.
I don't know, it's just one of those things that just drives me crazy. I just feel like
Yes.
we
Well, it
should
comes
maybe
up a
dial it
lot
back a little
too.
bit.
Yeah, about, how are we making more, inviting and accessible to the younger generations? Well, younger generations never used to like drinking wine to begin with. They usually start drinking like in their 30s anyways. So
Yeah,
I get planting the seed, but we also have to take care of the people who are still drinking the wine, the
yeah,
boomers, the Gen X. Like there's got to be a balance. But again, I think it comes down to like the wineries and what their business objectives are, because we can't be everything to everyone.
yeah.
So yeah.
I like that. I like your term, pour and ignore,
Oh,
because there's a lot of that out there, there's no doubt.
yes.
So
Well, then there's also the show up and throw up, where they just like hammer you with all the information and then don't let you talk at all. So there's got to be a
no, that's actually just as bad sometimes. So I'm
yes,
like, oh my God, like I get it. You know a lot.
yes, exactly.
Jesus, please.
Yes.
All right, let me switch gears with you. So let's jump out of the wine industry for a little bit. Like, where did you grow up?
It doesn't come out and about. The more I get comfortable, the more my accent comes out.
Yeah, it does
Yeah.
actually.
So I grew up in a small town in the middle of nowhere in Canada. And then I spent 9 winters in Calgary, Alberta, when I am done with winter and moved to Napa.
Would like why? I mean, were you like, I'm wanting to get in, I'm wanting to get into wine, so I'm going
No,
to
that wasn't
no.
even on my radar. I just had an aunt who lived in sunny California and decided that that's where I was moving, whether she wanted me or not. Thankfully, she did. So
That's so funny. How long now? When was that?
96.
Oh, so you've been down here for a good spell. I
Yeah.
know I grew up in New Jersey on the East Coast, and I moved out here in 1991, and uh, just because I wanted to go to sunny California. I'd never been to California, so I just wanted to see what it was like, and I had all these like ideas, and
Absolutely. Of
and I wound up in Northern California. In my mind, I'd really kind of pictured Southern California,
course, because that's
these
what you see
beaches and
on
stuff.
TV.
Yeah, exactly. But and I didn't really know much about wine, barely anything, but that
Yep.
was what was happening here, and
Yep. My
I,
first job out of I went to Sonoma State in your neck of the woods.
yeah,
I got my English literature degree.
okay,
But one of my first jobs was working for Leslie Bergland when she had the Ambrosia wine catalog. And so I
yeah,
was
yeah.
writing 7 wine club newsletters a month and didn't know anything about wine. So my wine education was like deep end of the pool really quick.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. Yeah, yeah, different world. I remember that. That
Yeah.
that was very successful.
Yeah, she sold that to 1-800 Flowers
Yeah, I
and then
remember
Wise
that.
came shortly thereafter.
Yeah. Now, do you have brothers or sisters?
I'm the youngest of 5.
Are they
So
all? Where's everybody
all but
else?
one, all but one is still in Canada. And
Okay,
I have one sibling that's married with adult children who have children in Washington State, so just outside Spokane.
okay. Now, do you go back? Do you go back to visit your family much, or
Yeah, in
how?
fact, over Independence Day,
Independence Day.
American Independence Day. Yeah, we're I'm going up there to see my family, spend some time up there, go to the greatest outdoor show on earth, the Calgary Stampede.
Oh, you know what? I've heard that's incredible.
Well, I used to live there for, so, but I haven't been in years. So, and then my partner's coming with me and he'll get the deep end of the pool.
That's great. Well, that's a good segue to my next question to you because I know you and your partner love to travel and been
Yes.
done some pretty cool places. Um, where's I know I'm thinking about Tahiti in particular, like because we're friends on Facebook, right? So I saw your awesome pictures and the cabin over the water, the hut over the water, which was crazy. Um, where are you guys going next? Besides, well, you go to Calgary, right? But then you
Yeah.
got any other cool exotic vacations planned?
Yes. So I decided I need to sort of like test it out. Was Tahiti and Bora Bora the better place, or should I, I need to go to Fiji and see if that's, the place. And I was trying to get to the Maldives, but that's a really long flight. And yeah, my man is just not gonna sit on a plane. Like barely 9 hours is like that's the extent, but 23, 26, whatever it is, yeah, that's not happening.
That's crazy, right? You just gotta
Yeah.
pass out, hopefully. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
That's called when you're retired, go to a bunch of different places along the way and make
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
All right. So I was also I did trying to do a little bit of homework here and reading your bio, and you talked about how much you like to read.
Yes.
So do you read? Do you listen? Like, what do you like?
All
Both?
both. In the mornings I go for a walk and I listen on my headphones as I walk in my neighborhood. But I don't watch any TV really, so I read a lot. And so on average, I would say my book consumption is somewhere between 200 and 250 a year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so
Really?
but like people watch hours of TV. I'm just sitting there reading my book. So, I mean, and to be honest, it's hilarious because as I said, my degree was in English literature, 17th century English literature. And you know what I read? Nothing highbrow. It's all brain candy. It's all like science fiction, fantasy, paranormal, romance.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
When I read, I fall asleep almost immediately, but then I started doing more audiobooks, and I'm wanting to go back and do these classics. So what I'm listening to right now, which seems crazy, is the Count of Monte Cristo, right? Which is which is an awesome book. It was written 150 years ago, but it's like, oh my God, I actually love this. It's incredible.
Yes. It's great when you get audible or whatever. And so when you're driving or, I like to do that kind of thing, that and podcasts when I'm driving, that's my go-to.
You got any special podcasts that you're particularly fond of?
A lot of my consumption is around things like leadership stuff. So I'll listen to I think it's the Table Group with Patrick Lencioni, Simon Sinek, or Brene Brown, or that's sort of the genre of a lot of what if I'm going to listen to a podcast and I want to broaden my horizons.
Yeah, brush up on your leadership technique.
Exactly.
Well, that's great. Well, listen, Jen, this has been super fun. Thank you for
I feel like we could talk for hours. So
I know. I want to keep our audience engaged, but no, I really appreciate you jumping on and doing this with us. We love working with you. I'm sure we're going to continue to work together for a long time. I was thinking about, I think the first time we got to actually talk and get to, know each other a little better, I want to say it was at Oregon.
Yes, it was at the Oregon Wine Symposium. And
it was some dinner or something that we were at the same table.
It was an award dinner. Yes.
That's right. Yeah, we're in the back of the room talking. I think people were getting mad at me or something. Typical. Anyway, I've really enjoyed getting to know you and working with you all these years. I just think you're incredible, and I'm happy to consider you a good friend. So thanks for being with us today, and thanks to everybody who watched with us today. And stay tuned for more on the Win Insider series.
Awesome. Thank you.